Hello, everybody on YouTube, Facebook, wherever this ends up. I am here with the gorgeous literary goddess, Francesca Lia Block, who I'm so excited to see. She is the author of more than 25 stories, nonfiction and fiction, including the Weetzie Bat books, her series of magical realism novels, which I want you to tell me what magical realism is. She's received tons of awards, the ALA Rainbow Award, and lots of other amazing awards, too many to read. And she teaches writing at UCLA and all over the world because she's brilliant. Hello, Francesca.
Hi, Susie. It's so great to be here with you.
So great. We got to know each other about maybe 15 years ago or so when our little boys were in kindergarten. They were the cutest. Now they're big, tall college boys. So the reason why this is going to be a series of interviews, and you are my very first one.
Honored.
Well, I'm very honored to have you. And it's kind of fun because we used to just be kind of like girlfriends, and now I'm interviewing you, and I realized, like, I put a Facebook post and I was like, she was my friend, and I knew you were kind of famous, and I knew that you supported yourself by writing books, but I didn't realize what a big deal you are. And then you wrote this book, The Thorn Necklace, and Healing Through Writing and the Creative Process. And this is what I'm devoting my work to. And I want to read one quote from your book, and I want to talk about this because, as we talked about before the Zoom, a lot of women, a lot of people don't understand how writing can help them heal. And may I read the quote that you wrote in the introduction?
Please.
Francesca wrote, "I've written to transform pain, to save my mind from its incessant loopings, and to save my life." Would you like to expand on that?
It sounds so extreme, but it really is true. I do feel that writing in my life has calmed my mind. It's been cathartic to get the words out, the pain out onto the page, and then to form it into something beautiful, hopefully, or at least give it some order, and then share it with others. So that 3-step process, expelling it, crafting it, sharing it is a very powerful thing. And I read a book called The Midnight Disease by Alice Flaherty, which is about this. She's a neurologist, and she had an experience of she experienced a tragic thing in her life. And afterwards, she couldn't stop writing. And she covered pages with these little scrawls. When she recovered, she realized she was writing a book about hypergraphia, the inability to stop writing. And then she started studying it as a neurologist and discovered that it literally, there are neurological things that happen when you tell a story. And a last anecdote about that I'll say is she studied, there was a study on Holocaust survivors, and the two things that helped them were massage and telling the story, both of which get it out of the body, right? And same as writing. So that validated what I had felt instinctively my whole life when I read that book.
Wow. What's the name of it again?
It's called The Midnight Disease. It has a subtitle as well, longer subtitle, which I can't recall right now. And it's by Alice Flaherty.
I'm definitely going to check that out. Wow. Wow. It's funny, not funny, but interesting that you mentioned the Holocaust, because I was just listening to some Viktor Frankl and how he said, it's kind of similar to what does your story mean? People will survive if they have meaning. And he noticed that if he could convince these people in the camps that their life was going to have meaning in the future. And it just, so when you say to save my life, it can literally save your life, writing. I mean, I've experienced that in my journey with writing. I mean, I never had what's it called? Hypographia?
Hypographia.
I wish I did. I'd get a lot more.
Right? Sometimes I wish I still had that too.
Right.
Yeah.
but there have been times where I just it was like throwing up on the page, and I literally, like, one time I was really depressed, and I was in Hawaii, the most beautiful place in the world, in a garden where they filmed Jurassic Park, and I was just depressed.
Yeah.
And I sat down and I just started writing Dear Depression, and I wrote to it, and it wrote back,
Mm.
and honest to God, the depression lifted
Mm.
after that. And so, I know in your book, you really break it down, and I wanted to ask you about this. I mean, I know you personally, but in your book, you really share a lot of vulnerable, like, truthful stuff about yourself, which some people would probably not share. And so I wanted to ask you, did you ever regret, like, "Ooh, I shouldn't have shared that," or "I shared too much," or
I haven't so far in my life, but I'm reaching a different stage now where I'm a little more careful about what I choose to reveal. I wrote a book or beginning of a novel, and it was super personal, and then I just decided not to tell that story.
Mhm,
That's unusual, and usually in the past I would just share pretty much everything.
mhm.
But at this phase of my life, I'm being a little more circumspect. However, I think I don't regret having done that earlier. I do think it's how you can help others.
Yeah.
That said, there's this book, Craft and Conscience by Kavita Das. I don't know, my filter might obscure it, but
Oh,
there.
cool. Uh-huh.
And this was given to us at Antioch as part of the training for the teachers, and she came to speak, and she brought up this thing of when you're writing memoir, often your professors or friends will encourage the writer to tell the truth. If
Mhm.
something bad happened to you, it's your story to tell, all that.
Yeah.
She's looking at, well, there can be, this is especially for BIPOC people, this concept of, well, what if you tell this story and it puts you in jeopardy, right?
Yeah. John Leguizamo his father went after him, I think, didn't he, after he wrote his
Oh, I
truth?
don't know that. But yeah, so these things, that has not been a topic that I had heard addressed that much in the past. Like, I've heard a lot of writers who are concerned about it,
Mhm.
but I haven't heard a lot of mentors saying, let's be protective of you, so that's something I've been thinking a lot more about. I still believe you must write it, you must tell it, you must get it
For
down
yourself.
for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
right. And then there are steps to take to either transform it into fiction, change certain details,
Mhm.
lots of different ways, I guess not a lot, but a few different ways to disguise it or protect yourself or write something very, very different that isn't even doesn't seem related, but that is telling the truth, if not any of the facts, because truth is more important really in writing than facts anyway. That my poetry teacher taught me this, right? Like, I used to write very confessional, realistic poetry, and with her, I started writing this much more abstract poetry, and
Mhm.
that was more based on imagery and rhythm. To me, that started telling the truth much more potently
Mhm.
than the
Mhm.
confessional direct stories. So any poems. So these are all things to consider.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is, actually, if you write in an abstract or magic realism or whatever you want to call it, you get out of the way. Like, your personality is gone,
Yeah.
and only the universality of the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, um I remember it was like, gosh, 30 years ago, I was taking a class, women's voices. It was so cool. And every week we got a theme, and the week of the theme of family, I literally could not write a word. I just cried all week. And then, I mean, I can laugh about it now.
Right.
And then I just sat on the floor and cried. I'm like, I couldn't even think about what to write because it just brought up so much pain. And then I was in a writing class for about 10 years, and eventually, gradually, slowly. And one class I took, I remember before that class, she said, if you can't write about it, if it just hurts too much, I wrote about a bird who started to fly, and then she broke her wing, and that I could write about all day. and it was the exact same truth of my
Yeah.
childhood, only Susy was not involved. I'm
Yeah.
not a bird.
Yeah.
I wish I was, I could fly away. But yeah, so I think to get back to that amazing quote, to save my life, how does writing help save your mind from its incessant loopings? Can you tell me about that? Because I'm a looper for sure.
Yeah, I'm a looper
I mean,
too.
I'm kind of I'm kind of getting out of it, but the ruminating
Yeah.
can lead you to want to kill yourself, like literally.
Yeah, no, it's very, very destructive.
Yeah.
So I think it takes the pain and focuses it. It's instead of trying to not think about it, you are really feeling it.
Mm.
But as I said earlier, you're also transforming it. So you're not running away from it, but you're not just sitting with it and wallowing in it. You're making it into something else, into the bird, you know.
Mhm.
And then, as I said also earlier, it's you're then sharing it with somebody else, but in a form that has been crafted so that they can experience it as art, as opposed to just your raw pain and, you know, expulsion of that. So I think, yeah, I think it's the steps of feeling, transforming, and again sharing.
And I'm guessing that, I mean, I just know from my experience and memoirs I've read, actually there was only one memoir I've ever read in my life where I felt icky, like this person is mad at their parents, they're blaming and it felt icky to read. And then I read an extreme version of a memoir. Have you ever read Leaving the Saints by Martha Beck?
No.
Oof. Well, I don't want to spoil alert, but let's just say it could have been written from one perspective, but it was not written from a victim perspective, but it certainly could have. That's as much as I'll spoil the plot of her life. And it's so I think, yeah, and I think in my own process I was really hurt, and so to share from, what do they say, don't share from the wound, share from the scar, like once you've processed. And so it took me 30 years to finally do my one woman show, but for some people, I guess everybody has a different amount of time. Like, how long does it take you from writing the raw material of from the pain to being able to make it art, to be able to craft it, to share it?
I think it really depends. Each one is different for me, but I would encourage people not to feel that you have to rush that. I spent a lot of time because I was publishing a lot of books as
I noticed, my God, I looked over a book a year. Geez.
Well, I used to, right? Not anymore, but I did that. And because I was sometimes two, and I was doing it at such a pace that I didn't always have the opportunity to let it marinate. And, you know, in my last novel, House of Hearts, that I'm really proud of, but it took years, and it's not directly about me in any way. This character is very different, but the pain she experiences is related to the pain I've experienced, but it took 5+ years to really craft the story.
Wow, that's long for you.
Yeah, it was a long time, but you know, but it involved looking at all the elements of craft that I teach every day, structure and character development. And
but you were writing that book and then other books at the same time?
No, that book I was writing short stories. I was in school for my MFA. I was reading and annotating, writing critically, and I was teaching, but I wasn't writing other fiction at that time. So except the stories. Wow. I was writing poems, yeah. And
I will say, Google Francesca Lia Block and look at I love all the cover art on your books. So my genre, as my kids would say, what would they say? It's my aesthetic.
I can tell by your background.
Right? And then as I was putting on my makeup, I'm like, I'm fucking weak. Can I swear? I can swear. It's mine. I'm fucking Weetzie Bat. Like the later years, and I was like, is Francesca ever gonna write like Weetzie Bat, like the postmenopausal Weetzie Bat? What's going on? What's going on with her kids?
in Necklace of Kisses, she's 40, so that's as far as
I'm gonna have to read that.
And she runs away to a pink hotel.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea. It's great as my own, but
Yeah, right.
that's awesome. Well, let me ask you, just this doesn't really have to do with healing. It's just a fun question because I never asked you, even though I read Weetzie Bat. I read it a long time ago, and I was joking that my daughter, who's 18 now, could read Weetzie Bat, but at the time that I knew you, she was like 3, so it wasn't really, her wheelhouse, her genre. What gave you is that I mean, this you've probably talked about this, but I want to know for me, is it about you or what really inspired Weetzie?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's magical realism in it, but even some of this very strange, like the coven of witches that pretend to be Jane Mansfield fan club, that's real. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really my adventures in Hollywood in the early 80s, in my, late teens and early 20s. It's
You
wi-
are Weetzie Bat.
I mean, no, I definitely lived a lot of that. So, and the characters, are based on many real people in my life. So yeah, almost all my work starts autobiographically on some level and then goes through different.
I remember relating a lot because my friend group was similar to Weetzie's friend group
Oh,
with,
yeah.
that and just that free, loving, fun. But I didn't get to LA till my 30s, but I was, Weetzie just a little older.
Where were you at that time? Were you back east
When
or
I was a teenager, you mean?
yeah, were you in Ohio then or
I grew up in Cleveland, and then I went to a Bible college when I was 17. I'm
oh wow.
very not Weetzie-ish. Well, I kind
Well,
of was.
yeah, yeah. It's
Went
just
from
the
Jesus
environment.
Christ superstar, Jesus freak to like conservative Christian. It really didn't work for me. That's why I kind of got the fuck out of there after 2 years.
Amazing.
But
Yeah.
that's a whole nother Zoom. What what is magic realism, just to clarify?
So the term comes from Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Isabel Allende, right? So without wanting to appropriate the term, it's that combination of stories that are set in the real world, but that give equal attention to the magical elements that I see in my everyday life, but are made literal in these stories. So someone could, there could be in Weetzie Bat, the genie who grants the wishes, or the butterflies that fly out of the mouth in I believe in Isabel Allende, or the very old man with enormous wings in Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Literally, there is a man with wings. So it's that combination of it's set in a real world, but there are magical things that happen.
Well, the more I meditate, the more I question what the hell is the real world. But
Right.
with that said, right, that's a whole nother Zoom as well. It is reality. Does it matter to you if the reader understands the line or what they consider, or do you just not care what they think is real and what they think is? So
I
I've read
mean,
your books. I didn't find myself confused, but I'm kind of a wacky thinker.
yeah.
So I'm wondering if a more literal person might want to, like, for their own sake, want to know what's real and what's.
Yeah, I think the trick with magical realism when you're writing it is to make the magic seem real and the real seem magical, so nothing is questioned. So,
Ooh.
and the way to do
I
that
need to
is,
pause. That's like
yeah.
a tweetable moment or something. Make the magical seem real and the real seem magical.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's
the
awesome.
way the magical can seem real is, have you read Murakami?
No, but I will.
So the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. There's these very strange surreal things happen to this man, but the book starts out with him making pasta. It is the most grounded thing you can imagine. The
Right.
way it's simple, straightforward, you feel the steam, you taste this pasta.
Mm-hmm.
It grounds the story so that then when the magical things, the weird things start happening, we believe them because this is such a real world. Then as far as the real seeming magical, I use the example of Louise Erdrich, Love Medicine, one of my favorite novels, where she describes these household occurrences, just eating dinner, setting the table, in a way that the objects are personified. So it's not that the pot is actually, you know, singing or whatever. That's not a good example, but you get the idea. It's that the metaphor is so beautiful that it makes the everyday seem magical.
Well, yeah, and even though magical realism might be a more modern term, I mean, from Walt Whitman and Shakespeare and everybody
Yes.
who's ever moved me has made me realize the magic of a breeze
Yeah, exactly.
or a
Right.
flower, or
Right.
it's just because it is magic, and I think that's what artists do. And thank you for telling me I was a writer. I put on Facebook, I didn't
True.
believe I was, but when she told me I was,
It's so true. We just need someone who outs from the outside to remind us of the truth that we know inside.
yeah, you know, let's talk on that a little bit, because I'm a memoir coach, and a lot of people, I think, don't understand, like they're like, who am I to write my memoir? I'm not famous, I'm not cool, or my life's not interesting. And they're always wrong, because every life is interesting. I've yet to meet someone, they'll be like, I'm boring, and then they proceed to tell me the most fantastical. I'm like, are you kidding me? Your life could be like a movie.
Yeah.
But what is that, like, how, like, so you're a writing, you know, you're this amazing author and you're a writing teacher. How do you sort of overcome the inner critic within your students and convince them that their story is worth telling?
So I agree with you that everyone has a story, a unique story, and those people who are driven to tell it
Mhm.
are especially, or even have an inkling about it, right? Really need to pay attention to that.
Mhm.
I think that memoir is not there. Of course, the best-selling memoirs are the famous people, whatever, usually. But there's a whole branch of memoir that is now being called stealth help, which is the idea that through my story, through the writer's story, personal story, the reader can learn a particular thing about life,
Mm.
not in a book that, delineates the steps to be happy, but in a book a memoir that shows the actual process of someone trying to find happiness and failing and finally
Well, like
achieving.
you do so amazingly. You're so honest about anxiety and being nervous and compulsive. And I'm like, some people might be embarrassed to share their stories about walking
Yeah.
around the backyard correcting themselves as a little kid. Like, but when you read that, I was like, I was in the backyard with you going, oh my God, I did neurotic shit as a kid all the time. And I was just there with you. And you're right. It's different than a self-help book.
Because we're not being told, we're being shown, which of course in
Mhm.
craft is a big thing, right? We want to be shown rather than told. A lot of the time telling is good too, exposition is helpful too, but a lot of it you want scenes where you're right there in the moment with the person, with the character experiencing it. Another book I love is Wired for Story by Lisa Cron, and it's so good because it talks about the evolutionary nature of storytelling, where we tell the stories so that we as a species survive. I was being chased by the dinosaur, now we're sitting around the campfire and I'm going to tell you how not to get eaten by the dinosaur.
Mhm.
Real primal. So the craft elements that I teach are all there in service of making you feel that you are the person being chased by the dinosaur, so that you can really learn the lesson of how to escape the dinosaur.
Tell me more about that. How do you convince me I'm the person being chased by the dinosaur?
So we need
I mean, I
to,
feel that way. I'm a
yeah,
nervous wreck, but how do you do that through
yeah.
writing?
So you use craft to give specific, visceral, sensory, detailed descriptions
Mm.
of
Mm.
what is it like to be in my body? What is it like to feel the you know, hear the sound of the dinosaur coming towards you, smell the campfire, you know, just be in the senses, ground us in that experience of being in the body, and then also, and in the setting,
Mhm.
and also connecting to the character. So I'm not going to read the story about a character that I don't care about. I really don't, you know, I'm not going to learn how to survive the attack unless I get to that part of the story by attaching to the protagonist.
Mhm.
How do you do that? And those are the 12 questions that I talk about in the book, you know.
I shared them on Facebook.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
They're brilliant. Yeah.
thank you so much. It's after years of teaching, I was like, I need, somebody once accused me of not having a scientific approach to how I taught craft. And I was like, science? It's not science. Then I realized there are people that want to learn it that way. So I came up with these questions, which distill what I had known instinctively, and then what I had been teaching also
So
more.
they actually helped you in a backhanded.
Yes, yes, yes. That is the antagonist who forces one to grow. And that's one of the questions, the antagonist that pushes the character along their arc, the gift, the flaw, the want, the need, the arc,
Mhm.
the antagonist, the setting, the style, the crisis, climax, resolution, theme. Might have missed one, but in any case, yeah. So these craft elements all originate from, they're not random. They're not like, oh, makes a story good. Why? It's because we want to identify and feel what it's like to be that person in that moment, to go on the journey of the story and learn the lesson of the story.
What if the antagonist is me, myself, my own mind?
Yes, the antagonist, I think, is always that, but I also say to my students, you need to externalize and embody that as well.
Mhm.
So you can have, like, I
Not
have,
in a blamey way. I'm thinking more of like the self help. I'm thinking of the writing to heal thing. And as you're talking, you're so brilliant and genius at the craft of writing. And you know, when you wrote the Thorn Necklace about healing through writing, I mean, it's kind of like, is it the same like when you write just to write a great story or a novel, and you write to heal? Is it all kind of overlapping? It all heals you?
I think it in stages. So I think the impetus to write often comes from the desire to heal something.
Mm.
I think some of the stronger students I work with come to me with some like ache, and I see it in their eyes. They're like, I'm not sure I can do this. I just feel this need to do this and I don't know how to do it. And I have a look in the eye and I'm like, you can do it because you have that feeling, the desire to express, to then heal it ultimately.
Mhm.
Other people might come and say, I want to write a bestseller. You know, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
Like I want to write a hit song.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, sure, who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But that person's, it's going to be harder for me to, I can teach them both craft, how to do it,
Mhm.
but I can't teach that impulse to create, which is ultimately, I believe, an impulse to heal on some level. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it's exactly what you said when you first started talking. You said to make sense of, to
Yeah,
order,
yes,
because I mean, all this thinking of all the stories of heroines who've been through some shit. There's
yeah,
chaos, and there's a lack of order in your childhood, and you weren't safe, and you were
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
terrible things can happen to a
yeah,
girl or woman or a boy, but I'm a girl, so. And then as you write and as you mature, it from an adult point of view as you write, and then like I study the Course in Miracles, and it says a miracle is a shift in perception and to be willing to see it differently. So for me, writing my life was I could see it differently.
yes,
But if I would never have gotten it out onto the page, I would never have gotten out of my mind, like you say, the incessant loopings. I would be looping until the day I died. I'm a victim, blah blah blah,
yeah,
hurt me, did this. And it would be, all my power would be out there in the world. Whereas when I wrote it down on the page, I can see, I can distance myself. And like I told you, I think before the Zoom, is when I did my one woman show. It was almost like I was doing somebody else's life story.
Yes,
Didn't even by that time, but when I started 30 years ago, I couldn't even write one word.
right.
So this is, I want to ask this, but I don't want to be too personal. So from the time you started writing, you wrote Weetzie Bat in I have it here
It
somewhere.
was published in 89. I wrote it
1989.
in 86.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, 30 years ago.
Yes.
So from then to now, how you doing? I
It-
guess, how's Weetzie doing?
personally or professionally?
I don't want to get too personal, but I mean, I guess what would be interesting, you know, my mom always says history doesn't reveal its alternative. So the Francesca Lia Block from 1989 to now, who never wrote, and you now, who has been writing like probably every day since the last 30 years. Like I guess I can appreciate how important writing has been for you, but can you articulate, like, can you imagine your life without writing? Like, what would you have done? Alcohol, drugs?
Yeah.
Pole?
Yeah. What was the last thing?
The pole, the stripper
Yeah.
pole.
Probably.
Although that's a whole nother Zoom. Not that there's anything wrong with that fucking pole. Okay.
Yeah, no, bless that. I mean, if I could dance, that's all I would have done.
I know it's a great workout, right?
Dancing is the highest, music is the highest, and dancing is.
You are a great dancer.
Oh, but I clump around. But I would say that, I mean, it's brought me my house. It's brought me my daily livelihood. It's brought me my friends, my colleagues, my every job. Like it's brought me so much. It's brought me this connection to the film industry. So I'm so grateful for it. I'm in a different phase with it now than I was at other points in my life, but I'm deeply grateful to have been able to do it and to continue to do it and to have these benefits from it and to help other people discover them too. Really, that's the fulfillment now at this point in my life. But yeah, I can't imagine my life. I think I would have studied something probably around healing arts in some way, like psychology, I guess, would have been what I would have studied, but I was nowhere near ready to help anyone with that at the time. So.
Were you surprised? I mean, were you surprised by the level of devotion that your fans and your readers, I mean, people that tattoo your words on their chest and their body, and like people that, I mean, I don't like the word cult because it has a negative connotation, but you do have a cult following. Like people, I mean, what is the most people have, I'm not even aware, but I can imagine the emails and the things that people have said to you. Like people have, what's the most like touching things people have said to you about your writing?
I literally had people say I was going, I mean, this sounds so extreme and I'm a little uncomfortable saying it about myself, but I have people say they were, let's see how to say it, at a huge crisis in their lives, probably the penultimate one. And they said, I reached for your book and it made a difference, which I would that when I talk about these things, there's a disassociation for me. Like I wrote these things, but it doesn't really feel like me. It feels like, I think you asked that.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I don't mean to interrupt, but
no,
writing, I'm actually getting verklempt and my ears are watering, my eyes are watering because what I know about you, I mean, you're a brilliantly talented, skilled writer. And yet one of the questions I had to ask you was, do you ever feel like you're channeling? And I do know from reading your books that there are times in your writing where it's like, it is more than magical realism. It is like from a deeper, you're channeling, just like, Mozart and the great artists of all time. The Greeks called it the muse. I call it the Holy Spirit, divine intelligence, quantum physics, whatever you want to call it. There is a deeper source that is larger than you. And so when people say your writing saved my life, I say it's you or the channel, it's you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there also is a spiritual,
Yeah.
I call it miraculous energy that comes off the page through those words to their mind and their heart that is you, but is also more than you. So you are like the priestess of that love. You're the priestess of that message, the priestess of that healing that only Weetzie Bat gives it like that. She's the only one who's, there's no other voice that I've ever read that is exactly her voice. And that's your voice. But I also do feel that there's the love of God in it, or goddess, whatever you want to call it. Don't get hung up
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
name.
No, no, I agree. Yeah.
So I get that you're humble about it, but I also want to honor you that you are a beautiful priestess. You know, you can call yourself a magician. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me what you
Yeah,
call
yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
but you hold space
Yeah.
for mystical, magical, and healing that is deeper and more sensitive than just a self-help book. It
Oh, thank you so
because
much.
it comes from your heart.
Oh, that's
And how do you make room for that? Like, I know what I do. I meditate a lot. Like,
yeah.
how do you let that in? Do you meditate? I wanted to ask you.
You know, it's so funny. In the last 2 weeks, I've had 5 people say to me, "You must start." You know, I've dabbled in it. I have such, to be honest, so much. I believe in it 100% that it works, right? 100%. And I have such resistance. It's
Oh,
really a
that's so
problem.
common. A lot of people
Oh my God, it's bad though. So that's another Zoom call, like you said, but where you can teach me. But I will say that I don't meditate by sitting, but
writing meditative, maybe writing.
yeah, writing is meditative for sure. The House of Hearts, the character in House of Hearts, she was born full blown into my mind. I saw her walking through the desert to avenge the character in another book who had died in a brutal way. Like I didn't create her. She came to me. And then I took years to write this story about her because she was, you know, talking to me. She was talking through me to me. And she's already brought me so much in my life that I would never have.
What's her name? What's this character's name?
This is Izzy from House of Hearts, which is just out from Rare Bird books in last summer.
So you're just sitting around or walking your dog or something, and then all of a sudden Izzy starts going, "Hey, Francesca, hey, hey."
Well, I would say yes, and I'm engaging in writing, which is my practice, my spiritual practice every day in some way, whether I'm reading, whether I'm writing critically, whether I'm talking to someone like you, whether I'm talking to a student, you know, whether I'm writing a poem, writing a screenplay, whatever it is, looking at a movie and analyzing the structure and the beats. I'm engaged all the time so that therefore there is space for her to show up. Now, other people have a practice, they sit down for this many hours a day at this time of day, and I believe in that.
I wanted to ask you about that. You don't do that.
So
no, because there are two distinct camps who they both think they're right.
Yeah. Well, they're both right?
Right, but Martha Beck, who's a writing teacher, but I don't think of her as a great novelist like you, but she's the great self-help person. She said there was a study that proved that better writing came out of people who had a set practice. And I was like, fuck, because I'm not a regular practitioner. I'm more of an inspiration writer.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you can necessarily, I don't recommend just sitting around waiting for the muse to strike because, but I also but my brain, it just, the way I am, I need to be in motion. Look, my desk has always been in the middle of my living room with children and dogs running through, asking for things, still that way, you know, interruptions. It's not this, you know, pure, like, I know a woman that goes into a darkened room with headphones for many hours and just channels beautiful art, right? How wonderful. But I don't have that luxury. I just don't have it. So I kind of weave it in, but again, it's not something I recommend per se. If you can have a set schedule,
but you're intrinsically motivated to write. It's almost like you can't not write. Like, it's just
yes. I mean, I less so now, but that's true, has been true for sure. So I think yes, if if you can create that motivation on your own in the midst of distraction. It used to be something like when my kids were little, it would be my treat, you know, it would be like the fun thing I did, right?
Anything that wasn't being a mom.
You know, like I love more than anything in the world, but it is so hard and
I
you just
got
need
you, Mom.
a break, right?
Right.
And so anyway, but yeah, I do believe a schedule is good. I'm not surprised at that study. That's probably true, but I work from that place of like there's something stirring inside of me emotionally and I have to find an outlet for it. And whenever in the day I can, or in the week I can, I try to do that. And if it's not writing, as I said, it's engaging in some way with the art form.
Mhm. Well, I think we should wrap up because I know you've got a busy day, but I am really moved by this conversation. And I have one quick question. I was just looking
Yeah.
over my list because we impromptued it. Have you ever been writing and writing and just had like, as you were writing, you kind of answered it before with Izzy popping into your head, but have you ever been really surprised?
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh, by something you wrote, like, I didn't know I was going to write that. And you realized something you didn't know from what you wrote. Like, have you ever had a moment like that?
Yeah, I'm laughing because there's a funny story, but and which I don't think I'm going to share that because it's about somebody else, but
Now I'm going to be like, what?
sorry, it's not that interesting. But I will say that I have read, like I've seen my things, some of my work quoted. Oops, where'd you go?
I'm here.
Oh, how weird. My computer did a weird thing. Now I see you. I've read something of mine quoted and I didn't recognize that I was like, I wrote that. Like it felt like that, going back to that
Me,
channeling thing.
Francesca Lia.
Yeah. Like so that's an interesting thing that can happen. But also this is in my classes, I teach theme last after at the end of the 10 weeks, because I believe that often we will write a story and we will not know what it's about until we finished a draft. So House of Hearts, I thought it was about this young woman searching for her lost love in the desert. It's really, she's searching for her own identity and herself and her self-love, you know?
Oh, wait, pause. Isn't that every woman on earth?
Yes.
We think we're searching for some, hey, my prince. Oh shit, I'm the prince.
Yeah.
Spoiler for those teenagers who might be watching. You're not going to find them. Those of us who've been married for many decades, we kind of figured that out.
Yes, but see, I've never been married for many decades.
Well, I'll say for myself.
I'm still figuring it out apparently.
You've been dating.
Yeah, I've been dating for many
As wonderful as men are, when we find the prince within ourselves, then we share that.
Yeah, exactly.
We have many things to do.
Yeah, so that and yes, you can know something intellectually, but by writing the story, you can show, don't tell. You can feel it and learn it in a different way. So I think, you know, I wrote a book, I didn't know what it was about, and then my agent was like, oh, it's about letting go rather than holding on to those who have died or those who've left you. You know, it's the themes that emerge from the telling of the story, the journey, can then be integrated into our daily lives in a more powerful way. So I think we learn through the writing of it. And that can be that aha moment of like, oh, I need to let go of these people who have left or who've died. You know, I need to move on. I need to find myself and find the self-love, right? All those pieces.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind if you're going to write your memoir, your life story, or anything.
Yes.
Is you don't have to worry about the end. Like, you can have a great outline in your head, and then as you're writing, it can completely change. So the impetus to write can just be I like to say it's like throwing up on the page, just write. And some people say overwrite, just write and write and write. And writing is rewriting, so don't worry about it.
Exactly.
And then and I mean, the way I did my show was I had like 30 years literally of just hundreds of pages, and we just noticed that there was a lot of common themes, and we just circled all the juicy stuff and made it scenes and characters and turned it into a show. So it's the same thing for writing anything, right? Is that you don't have to be so worried about, you don't have to know the end when you're still just at the beginning.
Yeah, that's really important. Right. Exactly. It's like you tell it, and then you discover the message that is in within.
And it might be something different. Be
Yes.
willing to be surprised. Yeah.
Yes. It's beautiful. Are
That's
you
a
gonna,
great, oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry, are you gonna do your show again?
It would be more of a musical comedy, lighthearted romp.
I love that.
Juxtapose. I added a lot of music and comedy, but there was some deep stuff. So it would be
Yes.
only musical comedy,
Oh, I
lighthearted.
love that though. Part
Subtle
two.
metaphysics thrown in there under the blanket.
I love that.
I like my metaphysics. What my favorite movie is Defending Your Life because it's super deep but hilarious.
Oh, I don't know it. I'll have to.
Oh, Albert Brooks, super dry
Oh,
Jewish
yeah.
comedian. I love him.
Oh.
I adore him. So, and I adore you. And this was magic and real.
Yes, very, very much. Exactly. It's so great to see you.
I know I'm not your mom, but I'm so proud of you.
I love you. I'm so proud of you too.
Oh, thank you. I'm proud to be your friend. And so how can people find out about you if they want to check out your books and stuff? Where's the best place? All things Francesca.
My website, francescaliablock.com, and that will be my books and my classes, etc. So yeah.
Such a beautiful name, Francesca. And that's like your real name, right? You didn't
My parents were like, we want a poet, so we're gonna give her a poet's name, I guess.
Oh, they got what they and your dad told you were a writer, right?
Yes, and that is my mission, to take those people who look at me in the eye with that pain and longing and say, I have a story, but I don't know if I can do it. And for me to say back to them, you are a writer, because you don't come up to me and you don't come up to Susy, with that look in your eyes and that feeling unless you are. And then we can teach you, there's craft that everyone needs to learn. I need to keep learning. But that feeling is something that needs to be nurtured and heard and seen and encouraged and helped birthed into the world. So
well, I want to thank you because you're in a world full of wolves, you are a brilliant sheep, and I mean that. Shepherd. You're a shepherd. I felt safe with you. You are not a sheep, you're a shepherd. In a world full of people who say they're awesome, like you really are a very, very safe place, and that is why teenagers and adults all over the world love you, and your words can actually keep them alive. They saved your life and other people's lives, and that is so, so beautiful. And I know you've won a bunch of awards, but what could be more meaningful than that, right?
oh, thank you so much. It means so much to me.
Well, you're like living, breathing proof of what I believe about writing and the power of telling our stories. Not as victims, but as magical, amazing, badass, Weetzie Bat, cool chicks who are strong.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if the T-Rex is there. Fuck you. I'm gonna survive.
Oh yeah.
That's too funny.
Exactly. I'm gonna survive, and I'm gonna live to tell it so other people survive it.
And I'm gonna wear boots and a mini skirt. All right, Francesca Lia Block, so lovely. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.